when people are challenged by their circumstance, when people say that they can't do something or they have a limitation. I'm like, I had an 18-year setback and I was still able to accomplish it. So I try to give people that perspective to say, you have had the opportunity for your whole life. Like, there should be no excuse or reason why you cannot be successful.
Florida's not just where we live, it's where we build legacies. Welcome to the Florida Forge podcast. This show is designed to celebrate the entrepreneurs shaping our state's future. Leaders who care about more than just profit. Why? Because the businesses we build today will define the Florida our children inherit tomorrow. I'm Gavin Elliott, a Florida business owner for over 25 years, and together we'll uncover the grit, values, and vision that forge what's next in the great state of Florida. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Florida Forge family, it's Gavin here, coming to you from Boca Raton, Florida, where the sun's shining. It's another day of dreamers building empires. Today, we're sitting down with a man whose story hits like a Caribbean breeze. Raw, resilient, and full of the quiet fire that turns what if into watch me. Dr. Ty Richardson, Trinidadian son, PhD powerhouse, serial entrepreneur, and now a force in Fort Lauderdale's future. From kneading roti dough at dawn to directing million-dollar ventures and fighting for families on the housing authority, Ty's life isn't just a resume, it's a reminder that legacy starts in the heart. We'll laugh over street house hustle tales, maybe wipe a tear on those pink slip prayers, and get fired up about what's next for this guy who's proving, most importantly, faith and grit can move mountains, or at least Broward Scout Line. Now, Dr. Richardson, brother, welcome to the Forge. I see you already put up the chair. Let's unpack this journey that's got me so inspired already.
Sounds good, Gavin. Listen, I'm happy to be here. I'm a firm believer in, what you believe in can move mountains for you, and it's worked for me. I have tangible stories from the age of 16 all the way up to this year where faith has gotten me through a lot of tough times and paved the way for a path forward.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. And I'm so happy to get into that. And Florida Forge family, when you're listening to this, pay attention, because it's so important that you understand that what guides you as well as what you do matters. It's not just what you do. So Ty, paint this picture for us. You're a young man. You're 8 years old, up before the roti was hot in the Port of Spain, which it's a bread for the people who aren't familiar. What was the first taste of hustle like? Mixing dough while your parents prayed over the stall. How does that kid's grit still show up in the man leading Fort Lauderdale, Florida today?
Growing up in Trinidad, I was born to a family of entrepreneurs. My dad had stores with his brothers, and my mom had retail stores on her own. And so there was a joke that was made in the family. Our front yard was our dad's store, and our backyard was our mom's store. And because when we went to school, after school, we would go to the store, right? We would do homework in the back room, or we would help sell customers. And so at a very early age, I learned entrepreneurship. I learned how to run a business. And so much so that by the time I got to 16, I was like, I want to go work for somebody. I left the whole field of entrepreneurship, and I told my mom, it's like, I've done it. I felt like I wanted to try something new. I wanted to work for a large corporation. And so I pivoted and I went into American Airlines, where I spent 14 years of my career. But, once you have the entrepreneurial blood in you, it doesn't go away. And so throughout my journey with American, I did entrepreneurial ventures, and then I left American to go back into entrepreneurship. But I can toggle between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurship. I love both. I think there's value in both, but at heart, I think I'm an entrepreneur. And that grit shows up because I love solving problems. I like closing the gap. I like starting and coming up with a solution to something that somebody perceives as a challenge that they cannot solve. What I don't love is running that solution in perpetuity.
You know what? That's amazing that you say that, because I'm similarly wired in the context of solution solving. Like I love when there is something that someone says can't be done and finding a way to get it done. And the thing that really struck me about what you just said is this idea of and this is a practice of law, regrettably, particularly litigation, the never-ending problem. Because even I go to trial, I get a judgment. All right, now I have to collect. All right, now they won't pay. It's yeah, you know what I like? Sometimes I like to like fix something. So, maybe a door handle or whatever. And I start that task and it's completed. And I have that sense of fulfillment that something's finally done. So how does that feeling impact you when you successfully close a deal or do something like that?
Yeah, so this is a very interesting conversation, Gavin. So one of the things I did in my career is I became a certified Gallup strengths-based coach, right? And what that is that you study the strengths-based methodology and you understand exactly what you're asking me. How do people manifest the behavior that is naturally and innately, strongest in them? And when you take the Gallup assessment, you kind of get your top strengths, and then you figure out this is why I do what I do. Now, what you're describing is that concept of achiever, right? I do a task and I feel fulfilled at the end of it, but then I want to do another task right away, right? That period of celebration is very short and acute.
Absolutely.
However, in addition, like achiever is there for me, but I have what's called activator. And activator is like, I just want to start the task. We're talking about something and a light bulb goes in and I'll be the guy to say, okay, here's what we do next and here's how we get started. So I'm very much an activator. So for me, it's more about start solving the problem, starting the solution, and then potentially handing it off to somebody else to deliver. So I look for the aha moments when I coach a client, when I'm in my coaching practice and somebody says, wow, I know that's the thing I chase. That moment of brilliance that they have now discovered something that they didn't know and that will change their life. Now the implementation, and I've learned in the past 4 years as a coach, the implementation can go rocky, right? And it can be
Of
all over
course.
the place. However, if you and this is how I coach people in general, if you have the destination in mind, the journey should be, undulating as it were. The journey should be all over the place. You should expect it to not take the path that you want to. And my life has been that. My career has been that. The journey stays the same. The destination stays the same. The journey will change.
That is incredibly interesting because I mean, honestly, you have and before talking to you, and I was aware of the reality of the situation, but I always thought that, like, when you had a plan, of course, you had contingencies, but the plan was maybe like this, but not like this? Like, I thought it was supposed to be a straight line, but what you speak of is my experience in life that, like, I have here to here, and it doesn't go like this. Sometimes it goes back a little bit.
You plan for it to go like that, but how
Yes.
much and this is something that pilots will tell you. When you're flying on the plane is off course 90% of the time. Like, it is not following, like, when a pilot has to get out of turbulence or when they have to get rerouted because of weather, that plane is not on the path it originally planned for. It has to call air traffic control and move from point to point in the path it wasn't scheduled before it gets to the destination, but it will always land at it mostly land at the destination, provided there's not an issue. And it's the same thing we have in life. You can do everything you want. You can build a 5-year plan, and this is where faith comes in. You can build a 5-year plan, and you can say, okay, I want to be at this point in 5 years. I want to be married. I want to have kids. I want to have a business. Whatever you want to do. You can't predict what's going to happen to the economy, to your personal life. You can't predict anything in that 5-year plan. You may think you have milestones and markers, but 9 times out of 10, it goes very differently. And so once you accept that, this is where people say the journey is really the fun part. Once you accept that and you accept that early on in life, then it would be a lot less stressful as long as you stay focused on the destination.
You're a heck of a coach, man. Like, and you know what? I'm going to take advantage of you right now. Some pro bono coaching work. You said a word that was very interesting to me, which was activator. Because I will be honest, unless I'm under crushing pressure, I thrive in it, by the way, but it's very hard to activate. So, like, for people, I mean, God has graced you with that natural ability, or maybe it's developed. But like, how does one who is not an activator activate? Like, how honestly, I'm asking for myself.
Yeah, no, you put mechanisms in place. Like, so the whole concept of the performance-based stuff is you have strengths that are unique to you, that are you're strong with, that I don't have. And so I wouldn't tell you, go learn how to be an activator. I will tell you how to partner with somebody who is an activator, or how to take a project that you've started or you conceived and figure out how to load it into an app, how to send yourself reminders, like do a systematic approach to the activation. But don't change who you are, because if you start focusing on becoming an activator, you're not focusing on something that you are really good at that you really need to lean in on.
Wow. That's brilliant, man. Thank you, because it is what I said is 100% true. It's been very, very, very difficult to me. So let's you talked about how, and it's sort of used the word, and I must profess my ignorance. Uh, Entrepreneurship. I haven't heard that word before. What does that word mean?
So entrepreneurship is somebody who works within a company, but they have a leadership role, right? So it's
Uh,
consider yourself the boss of a department or a division or an organization within a company. And it's just used to reframe or to juxtapose entrepreneurship.
okay. So so basically anyone in a leadership position at an organization is an
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
Yeah. Anybody who's in a corporation, anybody who's in a company is an entrepreneur. Sorry. It's more effective to focus on leadership when you're dealing with entrepreneurship, but one can argue a frontline worker at McDonald's is an entrepreneur as well.
Okay. Now, it's very interesting because you talked about the entrepreneurial spirit that your family had. And my parents were entrepreneurs as well. My mom was one of 11 children from a farm in Ireland, and they had them, 2 parents, and 2 sets of grandparents living on something that was like 1,000 square feet. It was yeah, my kids would not stand up for it, but she started her own business with my father, and they were very successful for a while. So, what being you went the opposite direction, though, so what initially? So what took you out of that home environment to go the other way?
First of all, I love that you said Ireland. I mean, the accent came out really strong.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it, man.
For me, I've always been a free spirit. In the selection of the subjects that I wanted to do at school, in the selection of the degrees I wanted to pursue in college, in my career path and the opportunities that I pursued, I didn't follow a prescribed roadmap, right? I didn't, and I look at my friends today, and I had this contemplation last week. I have a friend who's very successful, who stayed the path, who focused on one skill set and mastered it, and now is doing very well. And arguably, I have been all over the place with my career, and I kind of figured, okay, he's doing exceptionally well. Could I have done that same process, that same path? And I caught myself, and it's like, no, I can't. It wasn't me. I have had such a full life, such a great journey, such amazing adventures, things that other people, I tell stories about it, it blows their mind. And I can't say that I would trade that to be in a more affluent, stable position now, right? I can't say that I would have given up on all of that stuff because it was really exciting and really full. But because I took the non-traditional path, off the beaten path, as it were, for everything I've ever done in life, you know, entrepreneurship and that decision to go into corporate was no different. I hadn't experienced it. I didn't know what it was. It looked glamorous. I mean, I was working for today is the world's largest airline. Back then it was a big airline. I was getting to travel the world. Like it was
Wow.
an opportunity. And I will say this, I got one job out of 250 applicants, and it was highly competitive job. I had never applied for a job. I'd never done a resume. I had never like I literally how I got this was pure faith. What it was
Man.
pure, it was destined, it was supposed to happen. I did the things, I pursued it with intention, and I got the job. And every job since then within that company has been part of me, again, leaning in and believing that this is the thing that I want to do and pursuing it until I got it, getting it, and then, enjoying it or leaving. So after trying corporate for 14 years, and again, in corporate, I did a non-traditional thing, right? I went from security to airport operations. Airport operations, 9/11 happened. Then, we got displaced. I went into banking. I started. There were two jobs I ever wanted to work on, which was airline and banking, and I got to do both at American. So I got a leadership role at the age of 23, running the branch
What?
for airlines. I was running the Washington D.C. branch at the age of 23, and then at 25, I took over business development for the company. And then at 28, I
Whoa,
was in
whoa,
charge.
real quick. For American Airlines, you're saying?
for the credit union part of American Airlines. So
But
American had the 6th largest credit union in the United States, and I was
you
head of business development.
at 25 years old, which was when I just graduated law school and went to work for a public defender, you were the head of that whole thing?
I was in charge of business development. And this is why I tell you that entrepreneurial spirit never left. Because even though I was within a company, I was pursuing opportunities and running and leading groups and departments. And so, I wanted to lead. I wanted to materialize solutions. I wanted to lead the way. And so, I got that role. And then at 28, the company moved me to Dublin, to Ireland, and I oversaw our call center, our European call center. Well, it was Europe and Asia Pacific call center operations for the company. This is the airline, not the credit
Yeah.
union.
Oh, wow. Oh,
So I was
wow.
28 running, the subset of a division, and making my mark on what that, company was doing in the call center operation space.
That's amazing. I yeah, I think of a 28-year-old today, and, I imagine them living in their parents' house and playing PlayStation or something like that. You were wow. I will say I've interviewed a lot of people with exceptional stories and all varied degrees of success, some 100,000,000, some 10, some few 100,000. But 28 and doing what you did at a corporate level is impressive. Now, I wanna ask you a question. I'll give you a little story about myself to lead into it. When I was getting divorced, we went to before, and, I'm not smiling because it was better for me, but anyway, um, we sat with a counselor, and within 5 minutes of talking to me, the counselor's like, "You need constant and new stimulation, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah." So, does that apply to you, and if so, how?
I don't know that I need constant stimulation. I will say that I run things till they run a course, right? And so my last 3 years, I worked for a company, and the company was a startup. It was a small company, and they did their very best to pursue, revenue and to grow the company, but they were very challenged, a little bit in how they operated. And so as a result, there was a lot of new stuff and new activity, so it kept me engaged. And then when it started to become, untenable, as it were, I left. In this past year, and this is where we have that undulating, journey. My destination is the same, but my journey has changed. I didn't know that I would leave that company after 3 years. I didn't know that I would be in a space now where I have to figure out, what do I want to invest in. I know I have two paths in life. I have finance and I have coaching. Those are the two areas, the two spaces that I have committed to and that I have mastered. But within each of those spaces, there are different opportunities that are facing me right now. I went through a period this year in finance where I was misled by a few things, and there were things that happened that set me back a little bit in that space that I have to overcome. And there are funnels and paths to overcome it, right? Again, I have faith that it will work itself out. On the coaching side, opportunities have popped up where I have to say, okay, do I want to invest in these? Do I want to grow in this space? If so, what does that look like? I have some fundamental principles. Like I want to stay remote. I want to make sure that I have freedom of time and freedom of travel. So there are things that will guide how I make those decisions and how I do the principles. But my faith is that, and I keep envisioning this. Some people call it manifestation. Some people call it the universe. Like, I keep envisioning success looks like this. It looks like Thanksgiving table, or it looks like a Christmas, dinner night, and everybody's laughing and there's bottles of wine, and it's a happy time. And as long as I stay focused on that, I know that the right answer will develop, and I will get the signs, and it will point to me, and it will say, this is what you should do. And so that's a kind of a long-winded answer to say, I don't need the simulation. The simulation is in front of me today, especially because I have to make decisions as to what that future is going to look like. And I am also very aware that whatever decision I make today may not be the same place I end up next year or the year after.
Well, let me ask you a question, and I'm jumping off script with this one because I'm being selfish. But, do you only coach, like, Fortune 500 CEOs, or, like, do owners of law firms or, like, small business owners, like, yeah, I don't know who your clientele is. I mean, anyway, you're saying a lot of stuff that's really resonating with me. So, like, who does a small law firm owner like me, someone who owns, maybe 2 or 3 grocery stores or 7-Elevens, are
Yes.
those prospects for you?
Yeah, in terms of coaching, I'm actually in the process of evaluating an opportunity to put together a group of CEOs with who are producing a million in revenue or more in their business to do in-person masterminding. So I'm in the process of evaluating what that looks like and how to put that together. But to your point, I coach anyone. I've done a lot of pro bono coaching for startups and people who are just getting their feet wet. I've done it for young professionals and I've done it for large multinational CEOs. But it's not I don't discriminate on the person, the industry, or even their competency to pay. If it's a solution that I wanna get involved in, if I think I can help, I'll help.
I love that, man, and I've definitely taken note. Let's I mean, you let's move forward a little bit in the timeline here in the chronology. So, that leap at 18, $200, a Bible, and a mom's whisper at the airport. Like, what fears and you landed in New York, I believe. So, what fears hit the hardest when you did it, and how did the Moravian prayers turn cold? How did that make everything better for you?
So I landed in DC, and it was a bit of a strategic move, right? My family had migrated a year before. I landed in
Okay.
DC a year later, and for me, again, it was brand new, like a first generation immigrant at the age of 18 coming to the United States, having to figure out credit. We had to buy a house, we had to buy a car. I I went to the credit union, the same credit union I ended up managing 4 years later. I went to the credit union to get them to give me a loan because I couldn't buy a car. They gave me a $5,000 loan on faith because I had 0 credit, and, over time, obviously, it proved valuable to them. But it was a leap of faith to come and have to figure that out, and it's different from my siblings who were younger, right? I had an 8-year-old sister and a 3-year-old
Oh,
brother,
wow.
and they came up and they got to grow in the system, right? They didn't have to it
Yeah.
didn't have to use any of those tools until they got to 18. I had to figure out how to use it, like, from ground zero, and I did. Obviously, I am today where I am because that was something that I, pushed and was intentional about and I persevered through. But when people are challenged by their circumstance, when people say that they can't do something or they have a limitation, I'm like, you have to understand, I was a foreign immigrant coming to this country for the first time at the age of 18, and look what I was able to do, right? I went to
Yeah.
school, I got the degrees, I did the job, did the best of my abilities, I opened a business, I got funded, like, I did everything you're saying you can't do for whatever reason you can't do it. I had an 18-year setback and I was still able to accomplish it. So I try to give people that perspective to say, you are born American. You have had the opportunity for your whole life. Like,
Yeah.
there should be no excuse or reason why you cannot be successful.
Brilliant, man. Well, was there a I mean, I when I came over from England, I had that posh English accent, which resulted in me getting the living snot kicked out of me until it went away. But, so there was definitely a culture shock there. I was only 5 years old. But did you experience any culture shock coming to America, and what are some examples of that?
I did. I mean, America was an immersive experience for me. When I first got here, I did admittedly have the dream of being an American teenager, even though I was 18. And so in my first few years here, I did things like I wanted to be a waiter because that looked cool and I saw people do it on TV. I wanted to work at Hollister, and so even though I didn't have to, I did a Christmas job at Hollister, and I worked at Hollister, and they offered me a job. It's like, guys, I'm 21 years old. I have a job. So I know I'm not 16. I have 21. I have a job. But I wanted to experience what I had seen on TV, and I did. I intentionally immersed myself in what I thought would be Americanisms, and that was fun. I have to say, like, so there was always a dynamic with me. I wanted to stay focused on career and accomplishments and that sort of stuff. So I did school and work at the same time, right? I used to live in Stafford, Virginia. Took me 45 minutes to get to school in Fairfax, Virginia, and then 45 minutes to get to work in DC, and then
Mm.
45 minutes to get home. So that was my day sometimes of just like commuting between work, home, school, and back again. And that was I wanted to live on campus, but I was with a family. We were still figuring out the whole financial thing. I couldn't do that. I am most proud of when we were, 4 years after getting to the US, we figured it out. We figured it out so much so that we were able, as a family, we bought a house in Stafford, Virginia after 4 years for
Wow.
$210,000, and then 2 years later sold it for $500,000, and that ended up being
Awesome.
seed capital for us to kind of move on and do other things. But that whole concept of buying a house in America as immigrants, that concept of, like, being able to sell it and again, make something and then do something with that money, uh, there are so many milestones and checkpoints in my journey that it was a culture shock, but it wasn't a culture shock to where I was put off or challenged. It was something that I leaned into. It was something that I wanted to experience. It was something that I wanted to, immerse myself in, absorb, and then celebrate once it was done.
Very cool, man. And when you were describing the things you wanted to do, I mean, in my mind, you must have watched the WB network because it like all the shows on the WB network had the good-looking teenage is that true?
It
That's
was
awesome.
it was all popular TV. It was the
Yeah.
WB and CE, I think, like, just the things that you see on
Yeah.
TV. I wanna do that, I wanna do that, I wanna do that. It was fun. I made the list and I just crossed things off.
That's awesome, man. I love that. Now you said you had a family. Were you referring to, your parents and siblings, or were you referring to did you have a new family at that point in time?
No, no, my parents got divorced when I was 11, so my dad actually stayed in Trinidad, and my mom is the one who brought us up here. So I have an older sibling and 2 younger siblings, and so, they came up ahead of me, my mom and my siblings, and then I came up a year later and joined them, and we lived as a family, for the first 4 or 5 years that we lived in the United States, and then we broke up and went our separate ways.
Okay. Did your father I mean, my dad passed, God rest his soul, but, he was I refer to these dads as '70s dads,
Right.
where, like, they worked all day, they provided, they came home, didn't really interact with their children, and rinse and repeat, and they'd show up at sports. That was so, like, what was like, after was your father similar in that vein?
Very much so. Even, when he was home, my father was very much a work, 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 work. We would celebrate holidays together. We would celebrate occasions. That was the one time we had his captive attention, but it would work, work, work. And Sundays were a special day. And then when they broke up and he left, we would see him. Sundays became the day that, we would do family stuff together. And then, as we migrated to the US, we became distant, and he passed in 2022. But while I was living in so there was a period where I was a digital nomad. So I left America and I went to Silicon Valley. I built a social network that didn't go quite the way we thought it would go. And so I
Wow.
pivoted. This again back to that whole journey again. So I
Yeah.
pivoted and I landed in the Caribbean where we traveled around a little bit, did events in certain places, and really, really just like ended up growing a bit of an events company that did events and worked with corporations like Microsoft and Coca-Cola and so on. So that was pretty cool. But so during that time, I was in the Caribbean. I got to spend some time with him and reconnect and figure out, okay, what were some of the reasons he made the decisions that he made and how he lived his life and so on. So I appreciate that because having me coming back here and then him dying a few years later, I felt at peace. Like I didn't leave. I didn't watch my dad or see my dad die and not know who he was. I spent enough time with him and we closed that loop as it were.
No, that's beautiful, and and I believe this may be universal, perhaps I'm wrong, but when you're a child and, my dad was my hero, and, like, when he left and everything happened as a child, it was very black and white, good guy, bad guy, mom, dad, you know?
Yeah.
And then but, like, as you grow up and you become a man yourself and you have, your own family, you don't necessarily say that what they did was the right thing, but you have a deeper understanding of the reasoning behind it.
100%. I mean, again, I tell people this all the time. Your parents only know what they know, and they only know what they know at the time that they know it. It's very much the same way we in culture and society have done things where we thought it was right because of the moment in time we were in, and few years later we realized, oh, we shouldn't have done that, or that's damaging to the environment, or whatever the case is, right? So we use the best case scenario of what we have, with the way we've been conditioned to understand it, and we take that action. Very few people have malice or negative intent or malintent when they are doing something, especially in the family space. Um, they are just conditioned in a certain way, and they're behaving the best way that they think they can at the time. And it's for us to look back, reflect on, and understand. Okay, maybe you might have done it differently. Maybe you didn't have all the information. Maybe if you had the information, you would have done it differently. but it's not for us to, I think, challenge or question or hold judgment for somebody.
Wow. Sorry. Hmm. Um, that last part impacted me a little bit. But moving on. Um, like one of the things. So I have an awesome son and an awesome daughter. One of the things from experiencing as a child what I could only perceive as pain was I made a promise to myself not to let that like even though I was very unhappy in my marriage, I'm Irish Catholic, like suffering is sort of what we do. So like for the yeah, I know with your time in Dublin, man. So but despite the divorce, I try to be involved in my children's lives. I try not to have them experience what I experienced. And they have this concept of generational curse. It's there's just the same thing happens. So do I'm busy. Obviously, you have to be extraordinarily busy. Like, have you managed to just break whatever you want to call it, but break that pattern of behavior? I guess I would say.
So this is the part I think I wrote I had to write a document for a coaching academy that I was in last week in Jacksonville, and it was a revealing document to see, you have to describe who you are. I am, Trinidadian. I am an entrepreneur. I whatever. So you wrote the exercise, and one of the things I wrote was that not I have not yet mastered the personal. And what I mean by that is like that is the thing I've I don't want to say unconsciously because I think that there are moments where I could have leaned in, but I have taken the escape hatch on the personal side of things. I've not developed what I would like to say is a stable family life with for myself. My siblings, my parents, my mom, like we're great, but I'm single. I have no kids. I'm old enough to have sorted that out, and I haven't yet. And I can say, as I started the call, like I've taken the winding road and the off the beaten path, and I've enjoyed it. And I've had relationships over my time, but I am getting to that age and that stage where it's more meaningful now. And again, going back to the analogy I gave with my friend he stayed on the beaten path. He's in a relationship. He's doing very well professionally. Like he's the picture perfect model of like somebody who did all of the things the right way,
Yeah.
versus me, who's like I purposely saw the right way and I ran, and I did that in business and I did that in life, and then now I'm at that reflection point in my life where I'm like, okay, now I need to invest in this part. Now I need to, as much as things are going on in the professional world, I do need to. I need. Let me change that. I want to, not I need to. I want to work on that. That's my next area of development.
I think you're gonna do fine, man. You're a good-looking dude. You're successful. You're well educated. You're extraordinarily articulate. Your energy is positive as hell. I was sort of how old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I just turned 46.
Okay, and you look young as hell too. So, like, you got a lot of positives going for you, man, but, yeah, I live in Fort Lauderdale, you live in Fort Lauderdale, I actually recently became engaged by the grace of God,
Oh,
but
congratulations.
thank you, but the dating pool down here is woo! It's a lot, man.
I I'm not gonna make excuses. I think that, in the past, I would have said that dating in a metropolitan city that's as vibrant as Fort Lauderdale and South Florida is challenging. It can be challenging because there's always like, I wonder what the next person looks like, or or is this person really genuine, or like, what are their intentions,
Mhm.
or will this last, or should I like just date in perpetuity? So those are all limiting beliefs and stories that you tell yourself to stay single or intentionally to kind of like keep yourself at bay. I think that whether it's a diamond in the rough or just a pool that you haven't started fishing in yet, I agree with you. I think that there's an opportunity and solutions, and it'll work itself out.
Brilliant, man. God bless you. So you have a PhD. What was your, I believe you have to write a dissertation when you get a PhD, right?
I did. I did. So my bachelor's is advertising. My master's was international commerce and public policy. And this is where I tell you I did not take the straight and narrow path. My PhD is in organization and management. My dissertation, because I got the PhD I started the PhD when I was with American Airlines,
Mhm.
and I worked all the way through, and I graduated the year I left. So I had already like spent 4 years doing a dissertation while I was with American and working on my PhD. So the actual dissertation was the perception of Generation X and Generation Y's, or Generation X and Generation Y's perception when engaging in customer experience and purchasing airline travel. So I wanted to do an analysis of what were the differences in consumer behavior when considering which flight to choose or which airline to choose when buying an airline ticket. And the when you do a PhD, you're supposed to add to the body of knowledge related to whatever that industry is. And in my dissertation, my finding was that this was 2012. Okay, so this was before the massive explosion of things like Yelp or Google reviews and so on. Like they weren't as prolific as they are today. But my to the body of knowledge, I added that Generation Y was really singularly focused on airline price. And they were not as interested in things like loyalty programs, which even
Hmm.
though airlines were all pushing loyalty programs at the time, it made no effect on this wide generation of people who were just coming up and could buy travel, right? And we see today in the market and society today, we see Southwest and JetBlue, and people are really more price sensitive and they're not as invested in the rewards. But Generation X were. The Generation X were invested in rewards. They would pay a marginal more in a ticket to earn loyalty points in an airline and then redeem them later. So those were one of the findings. And the other finding was this concept of peer review. Generation Y were more susceptible to making a decision if their friends said yes,
Ah, okay.
or if their friends were traveling on an airline already, they would join them. And so peer review was a deciding factor in the purchase of airline travel, which now has come to pass that people make decisions on Google reviews, people make decisions on Yelp reviews, and so on. So that was my PhD.
That's really cool, man. And it's crazy. And I'm 50 and you're 46. So I mean, you're 4 years, but it's not far away. And we our generation was the last one to grow out to be children without tech. Like,
Mm.
like, we
Saw
didn't
tech.
have
We,
sorry?
we we saw tech come in. So
We did.
I describe this as, we know what it is to not have it and what it is to have it. We can compare the dynamic of the two. Today, they don't know what it means to do anything analog or manual, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? Their comparison is we know low tech and high tech.
Yeah. No, and what's interesting about that is and I just found out about it recently, they've stopped teaching cursive in schools, and, I mean, basically, if the younger generation ever started war against Gen X, all we need to do is give them rotary phones and write all our notes in cursive, and if they'd have no idea what the hell is going on. Uh, no, that's cool. Now, are you, or have you been a tenant commissioner at some point in time
I
involved go on, sorry.
I've not been an elected commissioner, but I am a mayor appointed commissioner for the city of Fort Lauderdale's housing authority.
And what does
Today, I
that
still
role
have to fill
entail?
that. So that is really oversight and governance of the housing authority for the city of Fort Lauderdale. We really champion um, the housing. We want to make sure that the disenfranchised or the people who are lower level income, seniors, people have a place to live, and that we're accommodating the people who don't necessarily have the voice or who don't necessarily get represented, and making sure that they're not squeezed out of their home or they're not living an excessively unruly life, a yielding life.
Well, so, I mean, I live in Fort Lauderdale as well, and I don't think we have a homeless problem, but we certainly have homeless people. D Is part of what you do addressing that situation?
Not homelessness directly. There are other boards and other groups that address homelessness. We help folks who are below the median income, below the typical affordability line for housing in Fort Lauderdale. So we own the Fort Lauderdale Housing Authority owns buildings that it manages that we put
Okay.
people in at discounted rents.
Huh.
And then there are properties we work with that landlords own that we put people in and give a voucher so we can help them cover their rent because their income level isn't enough, or they're on a particular program where they have kids, and the kids need a home and they don't have enough money to support the home and so on. So we basically take care of the affordability of housing for the people who are under a certain level of income.
Oh, and that income thing is something that, I mean, with everything being so, like a gallon of milk went up to 4.59. I like protein shakes. Milk and eggs are important, and they went up a lot. But like my daughter loves animals, right? And she's had some early struggles in school. She's going to come back, I have no doubt. And we had a conversation about it today, but she wants to work with animals. So I went on in the either Grok or Chat GBT, and I'm like, how much is a veterinarian technician making here? And it was like 43,000. I'm like, what? How does anyone survive on that? I mean, I don't know. It made me worried for my daughter, to be honest, because, living in Fort Lauderdale is expensive, and and it does, and then I start worrying for my daughter. Then I start thinking about all these people that are just, they're not going to be able to afford a place to live. And I didn't even know we had a program like that in Broward County. And so I'm so glad to find out we do, and you're helping. Like, whatsoever you do unto least of my children, so you do unto me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very,
The
it's
economic situation in this particular city, and I don't know, I can't say counted because I think we still have reprieve in places like Pompano and Deerfield Beach. But I think we are the product of development. And, a lot of the Northeasterners who are already living in very excessively expensive areas came down to Florida largely during COVID and have continued to come down because we have no state tax and we're warm all year round, right? Those are the two big appeals. And so it's cheaper to live, but they're coming with already like made money and expensive and a higher level of what they thought things cost to live. And for them, it's a cheaper move. So what we're doing is we're seeing a migratory shift of very expensive into our market, which was inexpensive, has now become expensive, right? So it's still not very expensive, but it is moving up. And the problem is that the locals who kept it inexpensive are getting displaced, and they're getting displaced because nobody's saying no to the future of development. We don't have a lot of land in Fort Lauderdale. We can't go
yeah,
out. We can't go outright, but we
we got
can go.
peppered glass.
So
Yeah.
what we're seeing is a lot of development up, and as long as we continue to develop up, we're going to get a lot more influx, and we're going to get a lot more people from more expensive areas taking advantage of the opportunity that we have. There are mechanisms, right? So for example, some of these high rises, they have a floor or two that are designated for lower income or workforce housing, where they get
Oh,
a
wow.
discount on their rent.
Oh, I love
But
that.
so, well, they have to agree. The developer has to agree to it. The
Oh,
people buy. Usually, they'll develop these properties. They'll hold on to it for 3 years, and then they'll sell it to either a fund or a creditor or somebody else to run and operate and manage, and then earn the money off of it. So there has to be agreement. But that is one solution in solving some of the problem. It's not going to solve a lot. All of it. People will be displaced.
yeah.
But that's the price of progress, as one would say.
Well, I've always had this question because, for example, sister, I actually got mugged on Sister once. So, like, I mean, someone broke something against my head and took stuff, but like I was okay. But it was, there were rougher parts, but like people live there. And this happens in Miami a lot as well. People live there. And then you see gentrification take place. And I'm like, all right, where do those people go? Like, you use the word displaced. What happens to these displaced people? What happens to people who are, I won't say victims, but whatever the word may be of gentrification? What do they do?
They move. They have well, granted, when gentrification happens, those people do get a check, right? Like there's no they don't get pushed out. They have the option to sell, and when they sell, they usually get an appreciated value for their property. Gone are the days of eminent domain or people taking advantage of other people. They're willing to buy the property because they're going to build a high rise on top of it and make seven
Yeah.
times the amount. So they get paid. They choose to leave. Now, what you're describing though is that case where our income levels are not rising to the same amount as our expenses. And so these people, even if they wanted to stay, probably couldn't afford what was going to be in that building or what that development's going to look like when they're done with it. And they will have to move, right? If even if they chose to stay, they would stay for a period of time and then they would have to leave. We're seeing it in Flagler Village right now, where development has taken place all the way up to Third Avenue. Oh, everything's a high rise, everything's built up, and now between Third and Andrews, everything's being developed. And there are little houses that were costed $100,000, 10, 15 years ago, that are still there, but developers are coming in just offering them 150, 200 to buy
Yeah.
it because we're putting a $1.6 million townhouse in that spot. And so we're actively seeing that push of development happening between Third and Andrews now. And then the next frontier would be Andrews and Avenue of the Arts, right? And so it's live and direct. I wanted to touch on something you said about the veterinarian. One thing that people don't know is like we actually have people, and I sit on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I am the chair for the Government Affairs Council. So we talk about issues affecting the city. And one of the things that we talked about this year was the fact that we have teachers who are in school teaching kids. And then when the summer break comes and they have, they're not getting the same amount of money that they were getting before, are living in their cars, right? Some of the
Teachers living in their cars?
living in their cars, teachers
Oh,
who are homeless
jeez.
because they can't afford to live outside of when they're getting their term, outside of the term when they get their paycheck. And that has become a real problem, that people don't talk about and people don't know about and people don't address. Like the homelessness, the affordability is a serious issue, and it does impact more than we think we know.
I had I would have never I mean, I know they didn't make a lot, but I would have never in a million years perceived that teachers living in cars was a real thing. That's
Yeah. Teachers, wait staff, like people, it's a real thing.
wow. Well, I'm glad you're working towards trying to alleviate the situation a little bit and try to make it better. Like, there's that old line, "How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time," you know? You
Wow.
don't swallow it whole. You just take it piece by piece.
You raise
Um,
awareness, and I think part of it too is, one, raising awareness, educating the population so people know it's an issue and it's there. And then working on solutions, working on solving. And the reality is that the local city state government cannot solve the problem. It has to be a public-private partnership. Private corporations have to step in and say, here, we're going to contribute to the solution, whether financially or using an asset or whatever the case is, because that's the only way it's going to get solved. I mean, they're the ones who are generating the profits that can afford to take this down.
well, BlackRock inflates property values by buying whole cities at a time, so maybe they can throw a little bit in. Well, maybe do a little bit of good as opposed to screwing our anyway, um Move moving past that point, God, I hope they don't kill me. Um,
Maybe you got a viral moment on that one.
yeah, maybe. Well, but what I would, so what I love Fort Lauderdale, man. I grew up here. I remember when all about between, Oakland and commercial in Oakland, there were all these strip malls, grandma's ice cream, which is why I still love rum raisin today. Like, what drew you to Fort Lauderdale? Why Fort Lauderdale?
It's gonna seem weird. The exact reason I just told you. When I lived in Dallas before I lived in Fort Lauderdale. I moved back to Dallas when I was from the digital nomad 3-year stint that I did, for a year, and I wanted to live in either New York or Miami. Those were my destinations. And I have family that live in Boca, so I came to Fort Lauderdale for a family event, and I saw all of the cranes in the air. And my first instinct was, how great would it be to live in a city that's about to become a city? And that was
Oh,
in
that's cool.
2019. And I came, I joined various groups, the Chamber, the Tower Club, and I got involved. And it has been great. Like, I'm immersed in the business community. I'm on the board for the housing authority. I'm part of the fabric of, I think, what's taking this city to the next step. Now, I can't say I have a voice in it, but I can say that I'm along for the ride and I'm involved in the conversation.
That's brilliant, man. I mean, if people and we're not done yet, but if people listen to all the things you're saying, man, you're laying out a roadmap to like a life of happiness and success. I mean, effort's always required, which you have had as well. But I love this road. I may watch this more than once myself, even though I'm living it with you right now. So let me, and I told you about this before we started the podcast, but there is one word that I wrote down when I read through everything you said, and that word and my penmanship is god awful, but that is supposed to be evangelist. So how is it how Ty, Dr. Richardson, man, How does that word apply to you?
I'm not somebody who pushes an agenda. I like to place myself between the visionary and the frontline person. I like to sort of set the roadmap and translate the vision and make it an actionable plan and then help deliver it. So in corporate speak, that's like an integrator, right? And so
Okay.
it's funny, I can be an integrator for somebody else. I cannot be an integrator for my own company. I need an integrator. So depending
Fascinating.
on the situation and the role, uh, I like to place myself in that integrator role. And for me, if I believe in something strong enough, if I believe in whether it's housing or it's community or it's development or it's people, I go to bat and I immerse myself 100%. Whether it's on my path, whether it's something that mapped or didn't map, I will pivot and I will pour myself into it and I will do it to the best of my ability and I will make sure that it gets done. I would activate, as it were. And I think the concept of evangelist is somebody who really shares the word, who advocates for, who energizes others. And I think to some degree I do that. I do that whether it's financing the disenfranchised, whether it's empowering youth and young professionals, whether it's getting CEOs and leaders to be better CEOs and leaders, whether it's helping on housing of the community. If I believe in it, if I touch it and I'm immersed in it, I'm going to give it my all and I'm going to push it forward to the masses so everyone else can see what's happening.
And that's the word you said, advocacy, was because the word advocate, when you were talking about what you're talking about, the word advocate was resonating in my mind because as attorneys, we're both counsel and advocates.
Mhm.
So we not only advise, but we fight for them. We whether and you know what we do, we fight for them. That's what we're supposed to do. I mean, very very short story. On like I was like a year and change into practicing as a public defender. Um, Long story short, they wanted me to testify against my client, whether he was outside of a hearing on a particular day or not. I said, "The only reason I know his identity is because he told me. I think that's a." So anyway, whole deal goes on. They bring me to depose me. Uh, um, attorney-client privilege, attorney-client privilege, attorney-client. They bring me in front of hearings, attorney-client privilege, attorney-client privilege. It ended up resolving, right? But at the end of it, the judge is like, "Mr. Elliott," after it resolved, he brought me up to the bench. He's like, "Mr. Elliott, if you would not have testified, I would have thrown you in jail." To which I responded, "I know, Your Honor," and I would have gone. And you just saw him sit back that like he ex- and the reason I bring this story up, it was from it's connecting the last point to the point I want to make now is that there are some principles, and people have the expression die on that hill. There are some things that no matter the suffering you threaten me with, I can't back down from that. Because if I back down from that, an attorney kind privilege is one of them. Like I hold our profession sacred.
Mm.
I can't because then I'm not who I cease to be who I am. So the reason I raise that is is there anything in your life, in your code or anything like that that is sacred to you?
I mean, I think that there are beliefs and strong belief systems that I hold to be true. I believe in honesty. I believe in justice and doing what's fair and what's right. I think whenever faced with the question, doing it or doing the right thing, it's always going to be the right thing. And people say that and articulate it, but I've been faced with that several times where it's do it and get it done. And you have to imagine in the finance world that that is the case, right?
Okay.
Do it or do the right thing. And it's always been do the right thing. And sometimes the right thing has costed me like thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I face it and I was like, there's no way I can live with myself or do anything other than having done the right thing. And people will take advantage of that and they will take
Yep,
advantage of you. And they do. And they
they do.
know they're doing the wrong thing and they do it with a straight face. You
Mhm.
just have to sit in yourself and believe that this is what was intended. This is everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. You stick to your morals and your values and you do the right thing in whatever scenario it is. And it will work itself out. Faith will take you through and get you to the other side.
No, it will. Are you able to share? You may be subject to an NDA, I don't know, but are you able to share one of those stories where doing the right thing cost you significantly?
Um, I can give you parameters around it.
Yes. Okay.
So there okay, sometimes I get a client and the client comes and they say, okay, I need cash. My business is, we need to get a cash injection, and they would submit a loan application and we would get a request for $100,000. And the reality is like they have bad credit, or, the accounts are maybe negative balance, or there's NSFs or whatever the case is. And the only thing that they can get approved is what's called a merchant cash advance. A
Mhm.
merchant cash advance is the equivalent of a payday loan, but for a business.
Mm.
So the interest rate could be as much as 40%. Um, uh, but it is cash, right? And sometimes people can use that cash, get out of their situation, and then be able to recover. I often tell people, for me, when somebody's getting a merchant cash advance, I make 10%. For example, I can make up to 10%. So my business will generate, on $100,000, $10,000 in profit.
Okay.
And so it's easy for me to say, yeah, I can get you a merchant cash advance. You'll get the money. You'll end up paying back 140,000 instead of 100,000, but I get $10,000, and we're good. But I will 9 times out of 10 say, I will never sell a merchant cash advance unless somebody has an exit strategy for that deal. If you're getting the 100,000, it can't be for debt consolidation. It can't be for,
Yeah.
paying off an old bill. It can't be for anything that will sink that money. It has to be pointed towards new money, meaning that 100,000 is going to go into an extension of your business. It's going to go into new staff. It's going to go into an ad campaign. It's going to go into something that will generate you new customers to be able to pay back the debt plus the interest. If it doesn't, then I'm not going to I'm not going to, I'll turn down the funding. I'll turn down the
There you
$10,000,
go.
and I will pass on the deal and tell them, try to go to a credit union or look for another solution. Do not take it. Now, whether they go behind my back and do it anyway, I can't
Yeah,
stop that. But
of course.
I cannot put somebody in a revolving debt situation like that.
And, I'm gonna jump back to something you said before about, you know, having a code to a degree makes you predictable because 'cause you're gonna do the right thing or whatever it may be, and I guess this is just me talking about myself. But, like, one of the biggest, like, things that, like, boils me the most is when someone turns my code against me. When they
Mm,
know, like, there's certain even mouthing words that crosses a moral line I won't cross. There's certain things I have to do because my code dictated that drives me crazy. And I'm not leading into a question like it, but it was stuck in my head because yeah, that drives me absolutely mad. But
yeah.
so you have what were some of the and I'm jumping way back to the beginning now. What were some of the countries like that you traveled to while you were early on in your career?
So Gavin, I've been to 70 countries.
Dang,
In
a
my
lot.
lifetime. But I've lived in 3. I lived in Ireland, Trinidad, and the United States. I've worked in about 6. So I also worked in Japan, South Africa, Australia, and those were countries that I oversaw. I studied in 3 more. I studied in India, Mexico, the US, Trinidad. Uh, and then, yeah, traveled and visited 70.
Did you I mean, for me, home's always a favorite. When I
Mhm.
travel abroad, coming home is just a piece I love. But do you have a outside of home, do you have a favorite place that you've been to?
So I'm gonna tell you a story about home, and I'll tell you a story my favorite place. My favorite place is London. I will I if I could live in London, I would live in London. I love
Mhm.
London, I love New York, but to me, London and New York are similar, except London has is New York with history, right? To
Yes.
to walk on the cobblestone streets that, Queen Elizabeth walked on, to touch the walls and go into the William Shakespeare Theater that's still around today. Just it to me, it's steeped in history, and coming from a Commonwealth in Trinidad,
Yes.
that's like going to the motherland, right? That's like governance, and we
Yeah,
our
man.
our educational system, our tea time in as break, all that comes from there. And so that was I love London, and London will always be dear to me. But when we left Trinidad and came to the United States, we lived together as a family. And uh for me, family home became not a place, but people. Wherever my mom and my siblings are would be home. We used to do this family trip around Memorial Day where we rented this big house, and my cousins and everybody would come in, and we would just have a weekend of just family. And so much so that we migrated to the US, and we lived together for I think it was 6 years. And it was the first time that we had left each other after that 6-year period. My mom came to Florida with my sister. My other sister stayed in Virginia. And I came to Texas for American. And so we all got a symbol, this particular symbol, on different parts of our body. It's a tattoo. And
Wait, could you
when
show one more time, doctor, real quick?
yeah,
Oh, that's cool, man. What is that?
so it's an ohm.
Okay. That's
Yeah,
cool. I like
a
that.
lot of yogis and folks who study yoga know it. It's derivative of the Hindu religion. But we all got the same tattoo in different places, and whenever my siblings get to 18, or the family member gets to 18, they have the option of putting it on as well. But the story, so that connected us, as we broke apart. But the story is like when I was doing my arm, and you can tell I like tattoos. When I was doing an
Me
arms,
too.
I got a tribal compass, and this is a compass that points to this tattoo. It
Oh,
points to
wow.
home. And so
Oh,
as I describe it to people, I'm like, I look at that and I remember how we got it and when we got it and who has it. And it's a reminder of home.
that's awesome, man. I don't know if it's gonna show up or not. Probably not. But that tattoo says
Uh-huh.
Jesus saves. So
Okay.
I've got that one on there, and this one, which they're too small to read, but it says I am the storm, and it's from the it's from, and I'm paraphrasing, but this idea that, like, you know, the devil came to me and said, "You cannot withstand the storm." To which I responded, "I am the storm." And like, it's like my everything that is good in my life, I owe to Christ. Like everything. I have made so many mistakes in my life. I have been self-indulgent, lustrous, jealousy is not really my thing, to be honest. But basically most of the 7 deadly sins, you know? Like, but despite that, and I had this moment one time, I was in a dark place because I thought Jesus could love me, but it turned around because I realized that no matter what I do, I can never deserve his love, and no matter what I do, I can never lose it. So, like, that was and I'm sorry to go off on a tangent there real quick, but the tattoo, like, inspired me. So,
Yeah.
how many siblings left to get tattoos now?
Well, all the siblings have it, and then
Okay,
my nephew who turned 21, he got it when he turned 21. And then the other kids are like 15 and 14, so they have a ways to go.
cool, man. Well, let me ask you, and I ask this question of everybody, and there's this quote, and I'm paraphrasing it once again from Rocky, where it's not how hard you get hit, it's how hard you get hit and can move forward. Do you have a time in your life where, like, you were knocked down so hard you weren't sure you obviously got back up, but, like, you weren't sure you were gonna get back up, and how did that play out?
Several times, Kevin. Not just one time, several times. I think that the curse of off the beaten path is that, there's no predictability for what you can do. I think the thing I did well is I built strong relationships. I built a powerful, success story. I have academic qualifications. I have experience, and I have, for the most part, recommendations of character and the work that I've done. So if something doesn't work out, a pivot is not hard to do. I actually want to write I've written 2 books. I want to write a third book called The Art of the Pivot. But I pivoted over and over and over again, right? Yeah, the first pivot was, I left American. I left American to go do a startup in Silicon Valley, and that did not work out. I had money invested. I took money from investors from a friend, so that I personally paid back over time,
Oh,
from my savings account, from whatever I did, because I did not want to make anybody else the consequence. We talked about belief and value system. Like he shouldn't
yeah.
have, he knew what he was going into as an investor, but he invested in me, and so I gave that money back. But when that didn't work out, I had to figure out how to fix it fast. And the fix that we had in worked out until it didn't either. And then again, I had to fix it and fix it fast. And fast forward, then we had some good times, and then COVID happened. And during COVID, I didn't like everything like failed. My business was based on me generating revenue or loans. I was paying everything cash. I did not have a much beyond a 6 month savings. And when COVID shut down and banks weren't lending, we had to figure out how do we stay alive in 6 months. And I didn't have an answer. And so things shut down and shut down fast. And I had to pivot again really quickly. How do you make that pivot? and survive that. And I did. We pivoted, solved the problem. And then this year I had a bit of a catastrophic year with some dealings that were not transparent and did not happen the way they were supposed to happen. And I'm literally now in a space of pivot. And so the pivot's working out. We're almost back on top. We'll recover everything that went wrong within the next few months. But my belief system now is, don't worry, as you said, don't worry about the fall, right? Yes, it's regrettable. Hope it doesn't happen. But it's not about wallowing in the fall. Give yourself time and grace to reflect on what happened, learn from it, but quickly get up and solve the problem.
I hear you, man. And by the way, if you know a business lawyer, I know a guy. So like, so I'm Dr. Richardson. I mean, time, man. This dude, your energy is you're just a cool guy, man. You really are. Like, and you're genuine and you fight for the less fortune. And I have like this whole integrator was another term you threw in that I hadn't heard before, but you got activator, you got the other A, you got integrator. I forgot what the other A was.
Either.
Yeah, and I mean this has been brilliant. And this is there's bits and bobs from this. And anyone who listens, anyone who's wondering, first of all, the struggle, you had to struggle, you came back. You came over to this country completely unfamiliar. I mean, I actually make this joke. Yeah, I learned, I came from England. Yeah, I learned a foreign language when I came to America. It's called American. Like I had to learn that. It's been really great. And you touch me personally. I'm sure you could see my expressions when I was talking to you, man. Some of this stuff really, really hit home. But you have a legacy. You are you are a and I'm I believe you're Christian, whether you are a child of Christ. You help the less fortunate. You and simultaneously maintain success, which is a living example that you don't have to be a monster to be successful. You can still hold on to your values and reach financial and professional and personal heights, which is so important for people to understand. Because a lot of people think that everyone who's successful is an absolute monster. And you show that that's not true. So you have a legacy, but I am curious, like, many of that statistically 4 years after I die, man, but no, all kidding aside, like, what's the legacy of Ty Richardson? Dr. Ty Richardson. What would the legacy be?
10 years ago, I would have said, I want people to remember me 10, 20, 30 years after I was gone, whether that was as somebody who did something profound or something in politics. I've reconciled, within the past couple of years that my legacy doesn't live beyond when I die. My legacy is about doing it when I live. So if I can continue to help even one person and make a difference today while I'm around, if I can create change and make an impact right now, that is my legacy. I don't need people to remember me when I'm gone. I don't need to have some memorial or something that says this is what I did. I just need to know that I made a difference while I was here.
The whole servant mentality, the whole like when Jesus was washing the feet of people,
Mhm.
That's beautiful, bro. That's beautiful. I love it. Again, man, it's been a pleasure. I'm gonna hold you on after we stop recording because I just want to chat a little bit, but you're a good dude, bro. You're a really good freaking dude. And every good thing that happens to you is well deserved. But everybody, Dr. Ty Richardson.
Thank you, Gavin. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Florida Forge podcast. If today's conversation inspired you, share it with someone building their own legacy here in the great Sunshine State. Until next time, keep forging what's next for Florida, and we'll see you soon.